Probably Expo 58 did remind my parents on future perspectives and procreation. So I was born in 59. From that moment on, I didn't stop growing as time kept pushing me upwards. And rain, of course, the good old Belgian quality rain is good for growth. At the age of 20, while discovering the joy and the pleasure of a good cup of coffee, I balanced quite a period in these twofold aspects of life. Do you see what I mean? In a time that choices were almost by default too optional. Being single or being together, being an adult or being a youngster, being a student or being a worker. But never mind, time was not too complicated by this. And about the big items of today, some of them were not existent. Others were upcoming at a very early stage, and still others were present but in previous forms of existence. With reference to the first, clearly, internet was not available. Television, yes, of course. And in the second category, the idea of diversity was an upcoming item at a very, very early stage. Not a concept. Nobody spoke about diversity. But we had, nevertheless, the introduction of gender-mixed high schools, and even if social awareness on mostly men ruling the professional world was not so manifest, we had some brilliant female politicians excelling as role models, and the boys and the girls in my street all had their degrees, found good jobs as a matter of fact, and we distinguished in that matter from our parents also in the expectation of other future family roles. And a third kind of issue, present but in a previous form of existence, was the fact that in the 80s, yes indeed, we also spoke about crisis and financial restriction. Okay, we didn't live to it. But finding a job, for example, was a cruel calvary. Baby boomers came massively onto the labor market. Companies were reluctant to engage due to this oil crisis. Handwritten application letters circulated, yes, but mostly in vain, and applicants went physically to the offices for episodical series of interviews at each hierarchical level, mostly represented by managers of the traditionalist generation, that is more authoritarian, more hierarchy-attached, and less aware of the 68 emancipation movement that nevertheless was adored by their freedom-loving children that grew up in wealth and that sang together with great Bob Dylan that the times were changing. And from there, the origin of the saying, the youth of today. Do you remember how often it was used? Well, I do in any case. And what about relations? As well in professional as in private contexts, relations were typically characterized by this moral virtue of confirmed loyalty. Does this make any sense to you? As marriage, for example. But among progressive youngsters, some already live together, commonly referred to as concubinage. Because political correctness in the choice of words was not the best developed skill in that period. But green counterstream against all this conservatism was on the rise, romantically initiated by hippie tree huggers and gold hair sock wearers and political parties as Ecolo. In the professional realm, loyalty was coded by company culture, entry exams sometimes, internal career paths, and company link. And even if changing employer could result beneficial in terms of career progress, it was not a practice commonly in use. Might be due to the context of recession that kept people tied to their positions, making them do as their fathers did, staying. But my red Mitsubishi Lancer brought me at any personal destination. Oh man, it was a beautiful car. It looked like a boat, it never let me down, till I crashed it, which I still regret. One of these destinations was my first workplace. Now, professional life is completely different to the student environment I was used to. It's more structured, organized, scarce moments of fun, and I missed the peership among students. But it was not unpleasant being part of the youngest group in the team, please don't get me wrong. The older colleagues were very supportive, allowed for a smooth integration, we had a splendid 2-month lasting training program, and the required outcome was not too demanding, not at all. And as a matter of fact, the older generation wanted us to step into their footprints. No newcomer was ever expected to bring any change.